I wrote this book out of a sense of frustration because, oh gosh, about maybe 30, even 30, more than that years ago, I trained as a TEFL teacher, teaching English as a foreign language to foreign students. So that was when I learned real English grammar. So I've known since about 1982, what real English grammar consisted of. Just as linguistics, the departments throughout, the English-speaking world have known what English grammar consisted of. So I also knew that all that was available for the general public was the rubbish that they get from the traditional grammarians. How do you say it? It is I. It is I, Montmorency. To whom am I speaking? All that nonsense. So they were coming up with these invented, made-up rules, which bore no relation to what I knew was the magnificence of, a language grammar, which is a fantastic thing, and the fact that we know all of this stuff. Somehow, the general public had remained completely ignorant of this, of both the fact that they were wonderful at English and of all the individual rules. So I'd thought about this book for ages and kept on waiting for, an academic to come up with an enlightened English grammar. And it never happened. So eventually, 2012, I decided, right, I'll go for it myself. And even though I'm a layman with no proper linguistic training, I thought, no, somebody has to do this book. And I thought it might as well be me. My other books that I've published, they were all reviewed normally and conventionally. This one wasn't. It was either ignored or given a little bit of lip service and friendly reviews, and that was it. It seemed to die a death, and it had been lost in the publishing maelstrom that it came out on a day when 15,000 other books were published, and in readiness for that Christmas market, and it was just lost. So I thought, oh, okay, regroup and maybe do it for the paperback. Or I was quite in some despair about it, and then it did get picked up. In individual things, I went on the radio, and the great thing about nowadays is that you can chart hour by hour how your book is doing. I say the great thing, it's usually mind-numbingly awful, by looking on your Amazon ranking. So that morning before I went on the radio, I was 21,000th on Amazon, and thinking, well, okay, that hasn't worked. And I went on the radio and had, I think, maybe 7 minutes on a chat show right at the very end, and I just managed to give a little bit of the spiel about what the book was about and give an example of the adjective ordering, how you would never say a black little dress or a big London red bus, that kind of thing. And it was hardly anything, and I went home in despair again, thinking that was my last chance, I've blown it. And I checked the Amazon ranking that afternoon, and it had gone up to number 22 from 21,000. Grammar is the way that a language constructs itself and organizes itself, and every language has a grammar, and English has a particularly interesting one, but that's not what people think. So even in really enlightened, very intelligent people interviewing me about this book would always say, well, where do you stand on the word disinterested, or where do you stand on hopefully? And I would say, well, words change through time, and these two words have changed through time, and really there's nothing to get worried about. But that's not what people think grammar's about, and they think that's not what they think the issues are about either. And I think the future for English now looks very rosy indeed. I mean, there are other contenders, Mandarin and Spanish, but English really is the first global language, and it's now established as a global language. 800 million native speakers throughout the world, 1 billion people learning English as a foreign language. It's the established language now of communications, of science, of learning, of business, of everything really, and particularly of the internet. So English, I think, will now dominate unless something catastrophic happens. It's set to dominate now for the centuries to come. And English, the reason that's happened to English, really it's non-linguistic. It's just chance, political, social chance. The immediate reason English dominates so much is just America because America dominated the 20th century. And the reason that English is spoken in America is the British Empire at that particular time. English just managed to oust the other contenders in the US when it was becoming independent. The Americans could be speaking French, you know, had things gone differently. So it's an arbitrary, just a contingent thing that English happens to be the world language. However, having said that, English is really well equipped to be a world language, unlike Mandarin, which has got a ridiculous writing system, and unlike Spanish, which has got a rather complicated grammar, because English is about as simple as a human language can get. English grammar is really straightforward and very streamlined and very easy, relatively speaking, for adults to learn. So it's a linguistic law, in fact, that most people are unaware of, and it's very counterintuitive, is that the more complicated the society, the more inclusive, the bigger the society, the more complex the infrastructure of the society, the simpler the language will be. If you want to get a really, really complicated language with a really complicated grammar, you have to go to a secluded tribe of about maybe 50, 100 people, and that's where you'll find our grammatical architecture at its most baroque, you know, its most fancy, all the bells and whistles of tenses and noun endings and all the rest of it. English doesn't have that. English is really simple because it's been included and because so many outsiders have come in and they've forced this streamlining effect.